At first, I thought I better just go there and just make sure it's okay. And you see, you didn't even gas it. So then I went out and I gassed it for about 4 or 5 laps. And it's like, this car's faster than what I am. So it's like, I better stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Knoxville Night in America!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Knoxville Nights. I am Josh Gerlach, back with all three of us boys. We got Blake Walker, Cade Higday, and we are joined by an Australian legend, Skip Jackson himself. Not probably, my favorite sprint car driver by far growing up. It's pretty crazy that, if you would have told me 30 years ago, Skip, that we were going to be doing this, I wouldn't have believed you. But before we dive into everything here, make sure that you guys do hit like on this video, share it around, hit subscribe, create a Dirt Vision account. You can make sure you can watch us for free on Dirt Vision as well. Just have a few things to roll through real quick before we dive into our chat with Skip. Saturday night, Cade, you had your fundraiser for your race team. Quite the turnout. I think it was pretty much every table was full. It's cool to see.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised. We're the fourth one in line, so people are kind of fundraisered out by the time we get our shot at it. But I think honestly, with the weather not being too nice to be outside and not having 2 feet of snow come in, I feel like we hit that window pretty good. And yeah, people showed up. It was great.
It's good. Loved seeing it. Wish you could have been there, Blake, but the day job, if you will, called, so I didn't get to see you there. Quick shout out also, Randall Roofing. It was announced in Knoxville Raceway. Randall Roofing 360s are back, so it's cool to see that got title sponsors for the top 2 series, if you will, at the Knoxville Raceway every week. So wanted to give a quick shout out to that. Now it's on to the guest of honor here, Skip. We're really excited to have you on. We got a lot of stuff that we want to cover. Appreciate you being on here. You didn't have any issues at all getting on here with the technology. You're a tech whiz, right?
Absolutely not, because as I told you, little Jack. Unfortunately, Josh, you're always going to be little Jack to me because that's what I knew you
I'll take
as
it.
a little kid. But luckily, my son Andrew is here, and he's very technical advanced, and he's all that sort of stuff. So he was the one that got me set up. So I'm actually on his laptop.
Well, there we go. It's loud and clear, so we're good there. Speaking of little Jack, I'd be remiss if I didn't share. I'm going to throw up a quick picture here of I think I was 7 or 8 years old when had the junior fan club of the night or something like that. Quite the throwback to you and I. So a lot of good memories. Just want to dive into things real quick. We have a laundry list of accomplishments both here and back at home that we'll go through. But we just wanted to really dive in at first and just kind of hear about your start at, in racing in general and sprint car racing back home. How did you get started in all this craziness?
Well, actually, my dad used to race midgets back in the 70s. So we grew up going to the Sydney Showground back in the early 70s and Liverpool City Raceway back through the late 70s. And my dad died in 1980, but I got 5 brothers, and we're all within 7 years, so we're all really close. We all played rugby and cricket and athletics and track and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, we also used to race our scooters and our BMX bikes, and so racing was a big part of us as a whole family. And we kept on going to the races, and we met up with a guy called Rob Worthington, and I was about 13 or 14 when I started helping him on his sprint car at Parramatta City Raceway. And it was a big deal to go there and a big deal to help him. And kind of one thing led to another. And I started racing 3 go-karts and 3-quarter midgets and sprint cars. Then I got an opportunity to race in America. And it worked out. I thought I was all finished after the first month, but somehow I'm still here after all these years later.
Why'd you think that? What happened the first month?
Actually, what happened is we had a pretty good year. I was driving for a guy in Australia called Barry Lewis, and things were going pretty good. And Max Dumesny and Sid Moore were going to open up a race car shop here in Knoxville in 1991. And Max was going to race here for the season championship. And Barry approached me and said, hey, how about if we sell the car just before the end of the season and we'll start up and race in Knoxville in June? I said, absolutely. Because just to come to America, I was so lucky to come to America in 88 for my first time. Just to come to America was a dream come true. So to get a chance to race over here, I was going to do whatever it took. And we got here in June of 1991, and the first week we made the show and ran about last, but we done okay. The next week the Outlaws were here, and I ran a B main somewhere. The next couple of weeks I could qualify okay, but we really weren't doing very good. And then they had twin features night. I qualified good. Back then it was 16 cars, 16 laps. The heat race was invert 8, take 4. No transfers out of the B. And I ran like 6th in the heat race, so I had to run a B main. I came second in that. So I watched the first one, and one guy pulled out, so I get to watch the second one too. And Barry, the car owner, he was really disappointed. These are very polite words there. And he said, "No, Skip, we've given it a shot for a month. We've had enough. I'm going to sell the car to Garry Brazier, and I'm going to go home." I said, "Fair enough." And Max was still racing at the time, so Max only had one guy helping him, and he was going to go to Chicago to race. And so I said, "Want a hand?" He said, "Sure." So I went with Max to Chicago, and on the way back, he said, "The deal with Brazier and Barry fell through." So Barry said he'll race one. Since he's already here, we'll race this week and see how we go. So we raced that next week, and we done okay. Nothing special, but okay. Then enough to keep going for the next week. And we done okay the week after. And things kind of got a little bit better from then. And at the Nationals that year, I qualified 9th, come 4th in the feature, and we were like 3rd in points on a Wednesday night. And ended up starting 7th in the main, and ended up, I think, 12th or 13th in the main event in 1991. So I kept on coming back.
Is it kind of fitting that your first win was a twin feature, if I'm not mistaken?
A little bit, because the week before the Nationals that particular year, Max won and I came second. Max was won using the 1AU because he was the Australian champion at the time, and I was the 2AU, so that worked out really good. Then in 1994, when I did win my first race, yes, it did happen to be twin features, so yes.
Funny how things work.
Yes.
I think you should lobby that we should bring the twin features back at Knoxville.
Absolutely.
I loved it.
Me too. That was my. Although I nearly got 5 for the first year. In 1999, when Terry McCall won the first one, I won the second one. That was epic because, yes, absolutely, I do believe that was my favorite night of the year. Yes, because it couldn't make you, but it could definitely break you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
I have a lot of good memories of that. I mean, gosh, I can't even remember. I know that there was a few different guys. I think Lasowski, Terry may have done the sweep in the same night too.
Terry never did, I don't believe.
Terry didn't?
He did, no. I'm pretty sure he didn't. Lasowski did. One time they had the Outlaws do it at the race in September, and I think Steve might have won both, or him and Lasowski come first and second in both, or something really amazingly good. But
yeah, especially because they would. Go ahead.
There has been a couple of guys that have won both. I think Hodenshield might have at one point, but there's very few and far between that have won both. Yes.
Yeah, because you sometimes you'll get when they would do the invert, you get some guys that maybe not always needed to be starting up front, that they'd be up there, and it could give some opportunities. Yeah, I mean, I remember that. Yeah,
and you are correct, because some guys, it's probably their only time in their whole life that they're going to start near the front. So that's a good. Yeah. Yes, I do agree. That's a good race, and I wish someday, somewhere along the line, they would bring it back. Yes.
Start the lobby, boys.
Why was it Knoxville? How did you end up at Knoxville? You could have really ended up anywhere.
Well, actually, if anything, because in 1989, I came over here and helped Denny Smith, and he was racing the 56 Genesee beer car. And out of all the places I thought I might have ended up was going to be Indianapolis, because there was more racing around there and stuff. But when Knoxville was always a big deal in Australia, they always make it because it's such a big race, and Steve won it so many times, and Wolfgang was so amazing, and they came to Australia and they publicised it without publicising it. And Max Garry Rush came over here in 79 and he ran 7th in the Nationals, which was a really big deal. Then Max came over here in 85 and won the race estates on the Friday night, and that turned into a massive deal. And that kind of opened the door up. And Bob Trossel was from here in Des Moines, and he went to Australia a lot with several cars, and so he was very, very popular too. And just the way everything worked out, as I said, I got an opportunity to race here in 1991 with Barry Lewis and Sid Moore, and I grabbed it with both hands, and I was just lucky enough that it worked out okay.
So how much did you race at home then before you came over here? Did you really get your start like over here?
No, me and my brother, when I was 16, we brought a go-kart together, and he raced juniors. I raced juniors. He raced seniors because he had a driver's license, because in Australia he didn't get a driver's license till you're 17. So that worked out good. Then when I turned 17, I brought my own go-kart. I ran that for a couple of years. Then my friend Rob Worthington, he said one day, hey, I'm not going to race sprint cars anymore, but I'm going to race a 3/4 midget. And you want to help me build it? And I said, sure. Well, it worked out. Building a 3/4 midget in Australia, you had to build everything yourself. And he had a good shop with a lathe and a mill and a press brake and a welder. So I got to learn how to build everything at the same time, because I was a mechanic by trade, and actually turned into learning how to make everything at the same time. So to race a 3/4 midget was exceptional, because I learned how to build the car, the motor, the rear end. I learned so much stuff that I didn't even know I was learning. So I raced a 3/4 midget for a couple of years. Then in 89, as I said, I come over here and helped Danny Smith. Then I went back to Australia that year, and Barry Lewis, he was racing around Parramatta and stuff, and he said, if you help me, you can run a B main every once in a while. I said, okay, it sounds like a great deal. And that kind of turned into the foot. He didn't want to race anymore, so he let me drive the car. That was about Christmas time, and so I got to race quite a bit around Sydney, Newcastle, Canberra, but mainly in Sydney. And because at the time, Sydney was very, very strong. It was Garry Rush, Brooke Tatnall, Max Dumesny, George Tatnall. They were the best. That was the best place in the country to race. Unfortunately, the first year didn't really go very good. Then right at the end of the year, went down to the Easter Trail, which is a race at Avalon, Mount Gambier, and Warrnambool. And at Warrnambool, I ran third, which give everybody a lot of confidence. And so I came over here in 1990 to buy some good parts at the Nationals. I brought a set of heads off Kenny Weld, which was huge because nobody else had Weldtech heads back in Australia then. So I had an advantage there. And we just worked on everything a lot better. Then right out the gate, we had some motor problems, but then things worked out, and I won a couple of big races at Parramatta, and that was a big deal, and kind of just took off from there. And that went to the Warrnambool Classic that year, and I think we ran about 7th or 8th. Then we went to the Australian title the week after and ran 5th, and that's when a couple of weeks after that, things started happening with Sid Moore and Max Dumesny, and I came here.
Crazy.
Yes.
I thought you had a lot more years up back home before you really kind of spun up over here. That's interesting.
Not really.
You touched on like building all your own stuff, doing all that yourself. Do you feel like we should go back to that these days? Because I feel like it's just too easy to. Me personally, I feel like it's too easy for guys to get a ride and they just all you got to do is order stuff or whatever. Like
if you got a good credit card, yes, you can do whatever you want now.
Yeah, but there's not a whole lot of work that goes into it. Like I always think that's really cool. Back in the day, people used to build their own things, and you had a lot of different ways of doing things. Do you feel like we should go back to that? Because I do.
It's a lost art.
It's funny because as evolution has gone on, like I was watching a video last night from the Australian Championships in 1972. And the cars back then, it's like, holy struth. From 1972 to 1982 is a huge difference. And from 1982 to 1992, once again, there was a huge difference. But between 1992 and now, there's not as much difference as what there was in that period of time. So I feel very fortunate that I did get to build all my stuff, which enabled, because in 1990 when I came over here and bought the heads off Kenny Weld, well, I went back and we had to get a new block, and I had to build a whole motor. And fortunately, I had a really good guy in Sydney called Alan Felsh that helped me. And by doing all that stuff myself, you get to know and appreciate what everything costs, how hard you got to work at it, and what you got to do to make it all happen. So, do I wish you could go back to that way? In a funny way, yes, but it's just the way it is. But I do think it's better that you can work. A lot of the outlaw mechanics now, as long as you've got a credit card, they can just order the parts, and you really don't have to do anything to put them together. But the guys like the Barry Jacksons and the Kenny Woodruff these days, the Paul Silver, Barry Jackson, the really good mechanics, they can do all that stuff if they need to. And that's what makes them guys good.
Blake?
I was, all these people that you've raced with in your career, you've raced alongside a lot of Australian greats. Just, with Dumesny and Tatnall and Madsen and Farr and Brazier. I mean, looking back on that now, do you think that made you better? Do you think that made all of you better racing against each other, not just in Australia, but then coming over here in the States and doing the same?
One of the things that made all us better is when all them guys you just mentioned, Max, Brooke, Fari, Kerry, Garry Rush was a very good example of being a great race car driver because he rarely crashed. He didn't drive dirty. He drove hard, clean, and he was the level that everybody measured themselves against. Garry Rush was very, very good. And the biggest thing that I think really helped all of us was on a normal Friday night at Parramatta, we all had to start. The good guy started at the back. So Garry Rush would start 20th. And he was also the winningest driver at Parramatta with 96 wins. So, and that's both me, Kerry, and Brooke, we all agreed that at the time we hated it because it made it hard, but it was normal for us. But we look back at it now and think that was the best thing for us. To start at the back, and because the good guys started at the back, and if you're good, you made it to win the race. And more often than not, the good guys did still win the race.
And you didn't have to run over people. And like you mentioned how clean he was. I think that's a trait that you absolutely had in your career as well. You weren't someone that was going to tear up a lot of stuff. You weren't going to dirty people up. And you were a fan favorite for a reason also. Early on, it did take a little bit to get that first win over here. What were some of the biggest challenges? And I guess we've kind of learned a little bit. You were still pretty green in this whole deal when you were over here. What were some of the challenges that you faced? And then once you started getting going, mid 1990s, what was it that really turned around and got you guys clicking?
That's a really good question. First of all, you never had any money. Isn't that right, Kate?
Yeah.
Because I was in a lot of ways, I was very fortunate that I could race in Australia and for some really good people. And I had a job working for Meat Norton Tyres. Scott Meat Norton, he was a McCreary tyre dealership, and he had to deal with Carrera shocks and other bits and pieces. So I was able, in real wheels, so I was able to use what I was doing in Australia to kind of help me get bits and pieces over here as well. Everything about coming here is hard. Fortunately, back then days I had a 6-month visa, so I could come here for 6 months and go back to Australia for 6 months. So I didn't have to shovel snow, even though which is lucky, which is a really good asset because in Australia we never had snow, so I had no idea what you were talking about. But I was just, a lot of things just went my way, I guess. I was very fortunate. I did try very hard. I worked on my car a lot. I tried to make it as best I could. I tried to understand the car as good as I could. And then things kind of worked out. I'd never had a big sponsor behind me, but I was fortunate that I had enough little people that helped me that I could take the next step. I had some really, really good years with Jeff Woodruff and Jeff Rasmussen in the Jensen construction cars. So it worked out pretty good.
Heck yeah.
I just about shut my computer off. That would have been bad. Josh kind of touched on it. You obviously were what we would call a quiet driver. You're not driving through people and making a scene. You're also a very quiet individual, the way it is. What connected you to your big fan base? You had a lot of fans back when you were racing, and there's still a lot of people that really enjoy you.
I can't answer that, Kate. I guess the only thing I can really say is as a kid, when my dad raced back in the 70s, like me and my 5 brothers, one particular driver, a guy called Jack Parrott, he called us all Little BJ because he couldn't remember all our names because we're all just little kids. But all the drivers back then were always really kind to me and all my brothers. And I think I remember that as a really good example to make sure that I was kind, tried my best to be kind to everybody as well. Trust me, in the pits during a race meeting, I tried to be very focused and very, very focused. And I tried not to let anything distract me. I was quite intense sometimes, but that's what I wanted to do. And I tried my very best at it. So, but at the same time, I also knew that I remembered how good the people were to me when I was a kid. So I just tried to do the same.
And I mean, there's no, I can't tell you how many people last night or Saturday night when we're recording this were asking or saying that they were really looking forward to this. And you'd have left a lasting impression on a ton of people, including myself, because I do remember going down as a kid. You could have had the worst night, the best night. You would have never known because you always did. It was always like you had a great night when you were talking to us. And I remember the super long lines and everything. And I think we're lucky that there are still plenty of drivers that do that today. But there are some out there that do need to hear that, because without little kids, I mean, becoming new fans, we're not going to have, fans in 10, 20, 30 years.
Well, I was fortunate that things worked out, and having little kids like you that had a world's biggest smile on your face. I could have had a really bad night because, as you know, Kate, not all nights are great. But having a little kid come down like you little Jack, and saying hello, or Kate used to see you sometimes at the funniest places, and it was always good to say hello to you. So it was good. Blake, I never knew you back in the day, so I don't know. I can answer that one.
I love watching the races. My parents were like, we should probably beat the traffic. Terre Haute, 1999, your only win in the United States outside of the confines of Knoxville. Ironic that you talked about, you thought maybe you'd end up in Indianapolis. While Terre Haute's not Indianapolis, it's still Indiana. Against the IRA, what do you remember about that night?
That's a good one, because I did win a couple of races at Sioux Falls and Wisconsin, I think, a different IRA race. But Terre Haute, actually, if you go back to 1997, Manny Rockhold was driving for Bill Stroud, and he had a wedding he had to go to. So he asked me to drive that car at Terre Haute, and as a race in October. And so it was a USAC race. And talk about hurry up and wait. That was the world's longest 2 days ever. And in the end, the steering box broke or something. So nothing. I ran okay, but then the steering box broke. So then the next year, me and Woody went back there. Just me and him. And we ran the 55 car. And we nearly won. We got right towards the end. We ran out of fuel. And Leonard Lee passed us. And so I came second. So both me and Woody, we won. Then when we heard this race was going on, and I think it was early April, as me and Woody said, yeah, we're going to go back there. We're going to finish this off. And we won the race, and after the race, believe it or not, I was running the top and Donnie Beechler was running the bottom. And I was that focused on what was going on the top. He said, Woody says, you and Beechler had an awesome race. He was on the bottom and you were on the top. I said, I don't ever remember seeing him because I was just so focused on what I was doing, making sure I was hitting my marks and not making any mistakes. I kind of knew somebody was down there, but I'd never seen him the whole race. So, Woody said, oh, it was awesome. So I have to take Woody's word for it. And Woody is obviously Jeff Woodruff, and he's still a great friend of mine today.
What a great track.
I'm actually excited. Yeah, I'm actually excited. Me and my grandpa, we're going there. Me and my dad and grandpa are going out there this year for a USAC race. So I'm excited. I've never been to Terre Haute before.
Yeah, and Terre Haute as a little kid, like even in Australia, we heard of Terre Haute because they had the big midget race, and the Holman Classic, which is a huge race for sprint cars, the USAC race for sprint cars. All the big name guys have won it. So to both me and Woody, it's pretty good to win at a classic racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So looking through, I would say probably your best stretch over here was through 97 through 99. You had 15 wins at Knoxville, picked up 2 track championships back to back in 98, 99, I believe, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yep, absolutely.
So
yep.
During that stretch, what was that like? I can remember a little bit. I was a little young back then, but I do remember seeing you in victory lane quite a bit. How magical was that stretch?
I look back at the time. We kind of took it for granted because it kind of just got a little bit better each year, and then right towards 96 at the Nationals, I started driving a Jensen construction car. Things kind of fell apart with the Van Drecken deal at the night before Nationals, which is disappointing. But then I'd always kind of wanted to drive that car, and it just kind of worked out. And me and Jeff got on good. At the Nationals that year, we didn't do anything special, but because the Friday night race got rained out, they had a race on a Sunday night, and whoever wasn't in the main event could turn up. And they still had a lot of people that turned up. And I got really good, funny story. I asked Woody, he said, "Can you put a little bit more wing angle in the car?" He says, "Sure." I said, so he moves it up just a little bit. He said, "No, a little bit more." So he moves it up like a little bit more. And I said, no, crank it up. So he moves it up just a little bit more. We went out and got quick time, and we're just a little bit off the track record. I come in and Woody says, "If we didn't have as much wing angle, we would have got the track record, you know." And
that's funny.
Yes. And that really set the stage. That night we ran 4th. Kevin Gobrek won. Billy Pouch came 2nd. So the guys that beat me were pretty decent. Kevin Gobrek was driving the Pennzoil car because Hodenshield got hurt. And we came back to the season championship and we won that night. And it was kind of like we're all, me, Jeff, and all the guys that worked on the car, we're all similar age, and we all got on really good. We had good shaver motors, and the next year, John Boy from California, he built us a car, which is just a basic car. And more than anything, we all just got on good. And that's the first year we didn't win a lot, but every night we were like 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. And then the next year, John Boy built us a stack tube car, and I was a little bit hesitant about using that car. So we can't give it to us to use. We didn't even paint it because I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. On practice night, we went out there, and Rasmussen and Woodruff, they just wanted me to run the top, no matter what. So I'm running the top. We weren't going very good, and so we come in and make some adjustments. Went back out, it was a little bit better. And at the same time, people in practice night are passing us. Like I was going as fast as I could, but we had a plan. And we kept on, just didn't worry about anything else. We got by the end of the night, I ran the top every time I went out in the track. And then we got it pretty good. And we went out the next night with this unpainted car. We just absolutely smashed them. And that really set the ball rolling because back in Australia that year too, things worked out pretty good. And we all had confidence and things worked out really good.
How important obviously it's very important, but I guess what my question is, how long do you give a new team like that to gel? I mean, obviously you see it, sometimes you'll have a random guy get in somebody else's car and they go fast right off the bat, but a lot of times they struggle for a little bit. How long do you think that takes? And you've been in that situation a couple different times.
That's a really good question because it's kind of like in 2000, I went back and drove a cricket car, and Donny Schatz drove it the year before I did, and Schatz absolutely smashed everybody in Australia that year. Like he won 9 in a row right off the bat. Then all of a sudden things didn't go good. So I jumped in that car the very next year. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. I get to run Donny Schatz's stuff. And I was absolutely horrible. I mean horrible. What the setups that he had, the car that he had, for me, it just was nowhere. And then finally, about So me and the mechanic, Keith Giles, we got on good, but it got to the point where we weren't going very good, and we went to a track in Brisbane called Archerfield, and finally we ran fifth, but was a horrible fifth. And we finally blew up at each other. He yelled at me, I yelled back, and then all of a sudden, for the next month, we were really, really good. It's like he changed the way he set the car up a little bit. Maybe I pulled my finger out and started driving it better. I just needed something, and from then on, we were really good. So you just can't say, well, you do this and do that, because every situation is so unique. Who would have thought, like when I jumped in the 55K, that we would have done good, because all them guys, they drink more beer in one session than I've drank in my entire life. But we all got on, and a lot of it has to do. And if you've got a little bit of confidence and you got a good car and a good motor, but confidence is worth 1,000 horsepower, because like you go to Knoxville on a Saturday night and there's 20 cars. I look at all of them when they come through tech, and there's 20 cars on a Saturday night that it's like, dang, this is pretty good. And there's 10 of them that are like as good as any World of Outlaw team, and there's not 10 guys winning. So it just goes to show how hard it is at Knoxville, and how good everybody is. And what Ryan Tim's done last year is absolutely phenomenal. And actually, they took the first part of the year, they actually went a little bit backwards to go forward, and it worked out really good.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you talk about the confidence thing, like you were just saying there, you roll in there and you see all the top level competition. And if you're down on yourself, if you're not, really feeling it with your crew guys, you're so far behind. And, we could list off a handful of names at least, over the years that we've seen that guys struggle jumping from car to car. But like you were mentioning, if it feels right, and sometimes you have to air out your grievances and move past that, it's crazy how you can turn things around just like that and get back to winning.
Yeah, it's like Steve and Carl. Steve was the best. Carl was the best motivator in the world, because the first time I was here, Steve won a whole lot of races, and he come here and won. I watched Steve win the Knoxville Nationals in '88, and he was awesome. Then I watched him the next couple of nights later in Wisconsin somewhere, he won again. Then he went to the Jackson Nationals and ran fourth. And Steve and Carl at the end of the night, they're yelling at each other so bad, because I'm thinking, wow, these guys have been awesome, and it's like they've never done anything before in their life. And the very next night, Carl didn't even put a new tire on for Steve for the main event, and Steve went out and won because Steve, whatever the case was, they motivated each other very well. And every situation is different as far as getting everybody motivated, because Wasowski and Guy Frugel, they won a ton with each other, and they used to get on like cats and dogs. Now they totally respect each other because they realized they needed each other to go good. Whereas me and Jeff Woodruff, we never had a crossword ever. We never even raised our voice ever, because we didn't have to, because everything's just different, and we just work good together.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, with mechanics and crew guys working together, I think as this younger generation comes up, it feels like we're seeing less and less kids that are working on the cars. They're just kind of driving the cars. Is that something that you think that we should expect to see more of? Because you're down there, you see it all the time. Is that something that we probably don't want to get away from, or is that something that it's like, it's probably for the best, keep these kids involved and everything else? But times have changed. I mean, they have.
Yeah, it's like I needed Andrew to turn this computer on tonight.
Yeah.
Whereas with Andrew, he told me to change the spark plug in the car. You say, what the heck is a spark plug? Whereas to me, because I grew up with all that stuff, I was very hands-on, and I was a mechanic by trade, and I really liked I worked on my own go-kart, and built my own three-quarter midget, and when it came time to race sprint cars, I wanted to be involved. And probably sometimes over the years when I had mechanics with me, I probably made them more angry, the fact that I wanted to be more hands-on than they really wanted me to be. So I probably stepped on a few toes over the years. I remember when I first started driving for Roebuck over here, and we got rained out opening night, and I was here. So wanted to know what they'd done to the car, so I kind of pulled it apart and put it back together. I didn't really go. I found out all these years later that wasn't very, very wise of me, but anyway. But it's just different. Like Jack Odenshield, like he goes all the way back to the 70s, and he really didn't work on his car much. Whereas Dave Blaney, he worked on his car a lot. Steve, he didn't work on his car much. Whereas Sammy and Doug Wolfgang, they knew the inside outs of the race car, and Sammy was an innovator, always trying to think of the next best thing, whereas Wolfgang was so basic and so pure that he just knew what he had to do to win. And Steve, Wolfgang, and Swindell, that was so good back then. And especially out of the three, I looked more towards Sammy and Wolfgang because they worked on the car a lot, and I kind of looked at what they done to make sure that they were good to kind of copy them, if that makes sense. Because Steve just jumped in and drove it. And kids of today, some kids really know what's going on. Some kids not so much. Is it better or worse today? I don't know, but it's just what it is. It's just different. Is it better or worse? I don't know. I can't really answer that, but.
Yeah, and we had Ian Madsen on last week, and I don't remember for the life of me if it was during the show or if it was afterwards. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here at all with what Ian was talking with Kate and I about, but it's almost a little more concerning from a crew guy or crew chief, car chief situation, because as you said, the way things are working nowadays are quite a bit different. You don't have the car culture, at least that I see, yes. With mechanics, things like that. And is that something that you could see could be becoming an issue over the next 5, 10, 15 years, where not having that car culture, who's going to work on these cars?
Yeah, it's kind of like when I first came here to Knoxville. There was a couple of machine shops that done rebuilt small block Chevy motors or LS1 motors when they came out. But these days, there's no machine shops anymore. Nobody pulls their own motor out of their pickup truck, puts a camshaft in, and then puts it back on and see if it goes better. If you're lucky, they might put a different set of exhaust pipes on that they buy out of a catalog or something. That still happens, but not near as much as what it used to happen. There's no such thing as a carburetor, and it might put a different map on the fuel injection, but even that doesn't happen very often these days. Most cars these days are 4 cylinders. And if you want to go fast, you just put a turbo on it. If you want to go fast, you put an even bigger turbocharger on it. So, in a funny way, the whole culture has changed, but at the same time, there's still a lot of this old culture still around that it'll still be okay for quite a while yet, I believe.
And you can learn too, right?
Yes.
I know, like you and Cade, you had a really good episode with Tony Ross, and he kind of talked about how he kind of sees himself and kind of wants to continue almost like how would you call it for the crew guys, like almost not a breeding ground, but kind of
the ambassador
get your feet wet and kind of learn, and then maybe you can go off and help different teams that can travel a little bit more. And I think having something like that is very helpful, because not being afraid to make mistakes, I think, was another thing that he had mentioned. Having guys that make mistakes, learn from them, and that is how you get better. And I think that's another good way of being able to grow the crew guy space.
Yeah, I know, like you had Ian on last week, and I know he had to work on his cars because when he first started, he had to help, or he actually had started helping Kerry back in the day. And so he helped Kerry because Kerry and his dad built a lot of their own stuff too. And they buy a car from here, then he'd crash it and they have to fix it. And because in Australia you had to fix it, otherwise you wouldn't be racing anymore. So you turn into a fabricator at the same time. And Tony Roast, he's a really, really good fella, and getting to know him at Knoxville the last couple of years, he's a thorough gentleman. And he does things a lot different than what I would do it, because it's kind of like he's more of an accountant. He understands where every cent goes, which is it's probably a really good way of doing it, whereas I done it through pure passion from the heart, and somehow I made it through. I wasn't nickeling. I'd done it a different way, if that makes sense. But no way is more right or more wrong. It's just different.
Yep. You have different ways to get to the same success there. So
yes,
it's cool.
Okay, so but Tony Roast, he sets a very good example, and I was glad to see him on your show to explain the way he does it, because everybody does it just a little bit different.
Yeah, and we saw a really good reception to kind of the details that he went into as well, so that was cool to see.
Because for the last 7 or 8 years, I ran a deal with my friend Robbie Surface. Me and my brother Paul had to own the motors, and me and Robbie owned the cars. And the way we done it was different. We had lots of little product sponsors that helped us, and lots of people that give us a little bit here and a little bit there. Did we have a huge Casey sponsorship or anything like that? No, never. We never got that lucky.
Yeah. Kind of heard like Bill Baylog is kind of a similar situation, and he's on the World of Outlaws tour. So different situations.
Yeah, and somehow every week we were still able to buy fuel and a couple of tires, because we knew that's what we needed to make sure that we could give it our best shot every week.
Yeah.
And some nights it worked out pretty good. Some nights not as much, but we survived, and that was a good team effort by everybody involved.
While you're touching on it, you've got to see it from back when you raced to you're still involved in the sport now. How far out of hand do you think we are right now with what everything costs, and just obviously you have the inflation of everything, but how far out of hand do you think we are compared to back when you were racing?
Okay, for a long time everything's plateaued, because I can remember in 1991 I went to a race at Farley. On the first nights I was here, we brought a right rear tire at the McCreary truck for $188. For why that stuck out in my mind, I don't know, but I remember that. And the last year we raced at Knoxville was 2010 with the Goodyear deal, and we could go to the tire truck and buy 2 tires, a right rear and a left rear, and it was $400, so approximately $200 each. And in 1991, a brand new shaver motor cost $25,000. A brand new pickup truck cost $25,000. Me and my son Andrew went for a walk earlier. We walked past a car dealership at the end of the street. Brand new Dodge pickup truck cost $75,000. A new motor, after you wait for a whole year to get it, costs $75,000. So a lot of things have stayed the same. Tires have gone up from when in 15 years they've doubled. Because I asked Jamie last year, I went to the tire truck just to see what a right rear and a left rear tire cost, and he said, that's easy, $747. So from 2010 till now, things have doubled. And COVID, everybody looks at COVID, and I do too, because in 2020, when COVID, everything changed, and all of a sudden the things were creeping up gradually. They just skyrocketed. And for what that reason is, I don't know. But it's the way of the world. You go to the grocery store now, and it costs you twice as much what it did before before COVID. Everything costs double, and I don't know why. But is everything getting out of hand? Probably the hardest thing that's getting out of hand that I can see is like when I was in Pennsylvania, I was driving for Sean Keane, and he said, hey, we should probably, I've got the chance to get a new motor for Nationals. This is in early July. He said, who do you want to get? I said, well, I've had good luck with Shaver. Yes. And he said, good, I know Shaver. We'll do that. So I called Ron up early July and said, hey, can I get a motor for Nationals? He said, yep, we can do that. The week before Nationals, brand new Shaver motor turned up. Now, if I called Ron Shaver now and said, hey, can you get me a new motor for Nationals? He'd say, what, this year or next year?
If it's this year, no.
Yes. Because availability for everything is just different. It's still got the same Donovan block, it's still got the same All-Pro heads, and it's still got the same Kinsler injector or Engler injector. But getting all them parts and pieces accumulated is just crazy. So it's just different. And yes, it is very difficult because you got to plan so far ahead. So if something happened to you, Kate, and opening night you burn a piston, and you got to wait 7, 8, 9 weeks for a set of pistons, all of a sudden you're in July. It's like, dang.
Halfway through your season at that point. It's not,
yeah.
Put you in a pinch.
Yeah. Probably the other thing is, like back in when I first started, if something like that happened, go back to the shop, pull it apart, and try your level best to try and fix it and patch it up and get going again. But these days, these motors are so good and they're so critical and they're so well blueprinted and everything's so critical. You just can't quite do that anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to come back around to your stretch of a lot of success back in Australia, late 90s, early 2000s as well. But you mentioned your stint with Keen out in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, how that came about. I remember Lil Jack, he was very disappointed when Skip wasn't around Knoxville anymore. But you ran, what was it, the 53 car, I think, right?
Yes.
How'd all that come together?
Actually, what happened is late 99, Kevin Gobrick was driving a Zemco car early in the year in 99, and then he went and started driving the Amoco car. Jeff Shepard was driving a car. Then right at the end of the year, they all fell apart, and somehow, somewhere on the line, me and the Zemco people started talking, and I got the opportunity to race in Pennsylvania, and it was very difficult to call Jeff Rasmus and say, "Hey, I got a chance to run in Pennsylvania," and he said, I understand. So he said, we went through that with Delansky a couple of years before that, where he got a chance to run with the Outlaws, and I'd always heard how awesome it was to race in Pennsylvania, so I obviously wanted to give it a shot. And so I got the opportunity to run the Zemco car, and we won a race at Port Royal. But as a general rule, it was different. And then we were probably as middle of July, things weren't going very good, and they had an outlaw race there, and I didn't go very good. So they said, "We'll put Casey Kane in the car." So they put Casey Kane in the car the next night, and he said, "Yeah, this car is what you said is what I said," and it's like. And then that same night, my wife Laurie, she was talking to Sean Keene's wife in the infield, and next thing you know, Sean Keene called me and said, "Hey, I've got enough stuff. We'll put another car together for you." So okay, and that worked out. Sean and his family, they looked after me really kindly. And they give us an opportunity to run the rest of the season out. And actually, that new shaver motor that we got for Nationals was second quick. So it was pretty good.
The Knoxville fans, PA Posse fans, there is a difference. There is a big difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, talk about that experience, those people and everything else over there.
One night at Williams Grove, I crashed or something. And walking back to the pits, some of them guys got pretty angry at me. It's like, dang, I've never heard that before. Yeah, some of them are quite colorful.
What was your favorite track out there that you ran?
Port Royal, because I won there.
That's a fun track, yeah.
Yeah. Williams Grove, I ran second, so that was okay. Grandview, I ran second there, that was okay. But actually, the track that I ever raced there once is a track called Silver Springs. I used to race Sportsman's there every Friday night, and we raced at a PA Speedway. And that was I don't know why. I didn't qualify very good, but that whole night I thought, this track's awesome. I done really good in the heat race, and I ended up running really good in the main. So this track is just fun. I know it's just as a kind of a dumpy little track, but it was just a fun racetrack to race. And I was like, man, if I can go back there again, that'd be awesome. But that track's now gone. But you always get a track that kind of stands out, and that was the one that kind of stands out. But Williams Grove is got the heritage, whereas Port Royal has really pulled their socks up and turned that into a really, really good facility. So it's got good on them. Port Royal is a great joint.
I didn't realize that you won there.
I didn't either. Were there any of them out there that just did not agree with you? Like every time you went there, you had bad luck or something crazy?
Seeley's Grove was a track that I never felt comfortable there. I ran second in an all-star race there, but I never felt like everybody said, "Oh, it's just like Knoxville." I was like, no, this is nothing like Knoxville. Because I always kind of felt like I was sitting on top of the track. I never really felt good. But as I said, I ran okay there sometimes, but it's just a track that just always felt just a little bit weird to me for no reason. And I really can't figure it out. But Williams Grove and Port, I really like them places, yeah.
So you're a half mile guy then, huh?
I guess so, but on the same token, I went to there's no half miles in Australia,
Right.
And sometimes I done okay down there too.
That's funny. Yeah, we not saying anything about age here, but the record keeping was not as good back then, and so doing the research here, I did not realize that you had won at Port Royal. That's cool. That's a place that I know we've talked about here that we want to go to.
Yeah,
but
that's a really good place. I definitely recommend it. Yes,
Yeah.
they've done a great job because
it looks awesome.
the first time I went there in '88, I watched Jeff Shepard win his first race there, and it had these really dumpy old grandstands that should have been condemned then. And when I went back there in 2000, it's the same grandstands then, and right on the edge of the racetrack. It's like, wow, this place is amazing. But since then, the old grandstands finally fell down, and they had to replace them with new ones. And the whole place, they've done a great job of trying to elevate it to a great facility. So they've done a great job.
I love seeing.
Yeah, actually the best racetrack in the world at the moment, I'd have to say, is the Perth Motorplex. Gavin Migro and all his team, when it first opened in 2000, they struggled hard. But now, all these years later, they've got an awesome facility, great crowd, great racing. It took them a long time to get there, but mission accomplished. They've done great.
Yeah, I remember after the High Limit International event, the boys and I, we were talking that we've got to make a trip over there because it just, like you just said, everything surrounding it looks amazing.
Yes, the racetrack itself is good, the facility's good, the management's good, everything about it is, at the moment, that's the best.
Yeah.
Knoxville's very, very good, but Perth is just, at the moment, because you've got free TV over there and they're doing a lot of extra little stuff to make it even better.
Let's talk a little bit about your success back home then. Late 90s, early 2000s, you had a great string. You were a 3-time World Series Sprint Car champion. You won the Australian Sprint Car Championship in 2001. What was all of that time like? Like you said, you've had success on the big half miles over here, but then you go back and it's a little bit different racing back there.
Yeah, because it's funny because as a kid growing up, you had Americans come down to Australia to race, and there's always a big deal. The Americans were always awesome. Like when I was a little kid, it was AJ Foyt, then Johnny Rutherford and Pancho Carter, and then the great GP Garry Patterson. He was talk about a big deal. He was a big deal. But Gary Rush and Steve Brazier, they'd come to America to race, and they'd go back to Australia and be really good. And some other guys from Australia race in Australia, then come here and come back even better. So as a little kid, I thought, if I ever get to race in America, first of all, just to come to America was great, but to be able to race over here, maybe if I could come back, race, be even better in Australia. But from go-karts to three-quarter midgets was a big deal. Then when you got an opportunity to run the sprint cars for Barry Lewis, basically in 1991, it's finally got going pretty good at Parramatta. We won a few races. And the next year I drove for a guy called Bob Blacklaw, who was an absolute legend back in the day. And he won a couple of races with him, and I thought I was going to win an Australian championship for him, actually, but a muffler broke off. So that was one race I thought I was going to win. And once again, I still have my good friend Rob Worthington. He still helped me out. The next 2 years, I drove for a guy called Brian Linigan, and we won our first season championship at Parramatta. So I was won my first championship there, which was to me, that was a really, really big deal. So at that time, I was racing 6 months here at Knoxville and 6 months in Australia. So it was a big deal. And then after that, me and my brother Paul put our own team together. We had some really good help from a guy called Bill Gibson from Gibson Freight and Ross Nicastri. And we just mainly ran at Parramatta, but we ventured out to Warrnambool and a couple of other places, and we got running pretty decent. And then the second year, Sid Moore gave us a car to use as a Jenkins car, and we went really good. I was getting better here at Knoxville, and me and my brother Paul got this the year before we had an old Gambler, but it was good. But we got this Jenkins car. We put a new motor in it, and it was good. Right from everybody that I talked to about a Jenkins car, they said, "Oh, they're no good. They're no good." I jumped in it. I was like, "This thing's awesome." we won opening night, and I think through the year I'm not sure how many races we won that year, but it was a lot. Then we went to Warrnambool, and we ran third at the Classic. Then we went to Archerfield for the Australian title and ran fourth. So everything got going really good. And then the next year we done the World Series with a guy called Terry Darble. He helped us get along. And we actually won the first race we didn't go very good. Then the second race was a race at Claremont, which was the big track in Western Australia in Perth that was before Perth Motorplex. Claremont was a very famous old racetrack. And I won there. And I watched a video about 6 months ago, and I realised, dang, I beat Garry Rush. It wasn't all these years later. It's like, I actually beat him. So
That's
that really,
awesome.
Yeah.
it's funny, the little things that you kind of take you by surprise, sort of thing. And so I was very fortunate to win, because the World Series in Australia was a big deal, and you raced all around Australia for like a 16 race series. So to win that, the first go was really good. Then we ran second at Warrnambool Classic that year too. So we went from fourth to third to second. So then the next year, my brother built us a car, a frame. We got a new motor from Shaver. And the first night out at Parramatta, we didn't go very good. And we had one more race at Parramatta. We done okay, but nothing special. And then we headed, and me and my brother Paul, we invested. AJ was born, so I had a nice little kick along there. And we left Sydney to go to Western Australia to do the World Series, and we had $10,000 in their bank account. This is due to the whole series. So we had, at the time, we didn't think about it, but we had to be successful. Otherwise, we weren't going to make it back home. And the first night at Kalgoorlie, we ran fourth. And the next night at Claremont, we changed everything on the car because I had a mechanic helping me, a guy called Tim Gleason. He was a good friend. Turned out to be a really good friend. Qualified, we weren't very good, so we changed the car around a lot. Back then, we had 2 heat races. And if you qualify good, you start at the back of the heat races. So you're in traffic the whole time, which actually, once again, it made you race good too. And no, we're still not very good. So we changed the car around again. Still not very good. So for the dash, we managed to make the dash. And so everything that we thought we should do, we done exactly the opposite. Went out there and absolutely smashed them. We didn't have to touch the car the rest of the year. We were really, really good. And that was one of the years that when things even if one night I was trying to pass a guy for the lead and spun out, it still ended up coming back to 6th. So just things happen. And when I spun out, nobody hit me or anything. So whereas other times you'd spin out and 3 cars are going to drive over the top of you and everything's wrecked. And that was a phenomenal year. Then we was really fortunate to win the Classic too. And me and my brother Paul, we had basically all you had was a car and a good car, good motor, and we're all just on the same page. And when everybody's on the same page and the confidence is sky high, it kind of seems easy because everything's working good. And the next year we were able to back it up again to win the World Series. That was in '99, and but by then things were starting to strain a little bit. And the year after, we ran third in the World Series, and we didn't run quite as good. And that's when the year after I ran the Cricky car, and it's when things started to slow. Then Abby was born, and things in Australia started to slow down a little bit because I was more concentrated and making sure that my family was more looked after, and I couldn't be. My intensity wasn't probably quite there as much as what it was before then, and consequently, I didn't win quite as much.
Yeah. But I mean, for you, because your son then moved down to Australia or lived in
Yes.
Australia.
Uh,
You had talked,
you
you had talked to
Mhm.
Wade a couple years ago how like they joined you when you would race down there, and you thought that kind of maybe influenced just a little bit of that. And then nowadays, do you still miss home? I mean, is that
Yes.
still?
Yeah, like AJ moved down there 2 years ago,
Yep.
and he loves it. He's hardest thing for him at the moment is realizing how expensive the houses are, because a house here costs $250,000. Down there, they cost $2 million. Big difference. It's a huge difference. But he enjoys, for whatever reason, always thought he's Australian. Whereas Abby and Andrew, yeah, they went down there a few times, but it's like, no, he's home. It's just funny how all three kids are so totally different. Like AJ, as a little kid growing up, he tried to speak Australian, and just like every American kid, they really butcher the Australian accent up. Whereas Abby, who couldn't care less about it, she can nail it and be absolutely hilarious at it. But she doesn't do it very often because she doesn't care.
That's funny.
Yeah, but the kids are great, and they've all done. AJ got a economics and finance degree at Simpson. Abby's a second grade teacher in Pella, and Andrew's studying to be a CPA. So they're all done phenomenal.
Awesome.
Bringing you back home, as you're talking about your family, it ended up being your final win in 2008. You had the family there. How special was that to have that moment?
Last lap pass.
Yeah.
Well, got to remember, the week before we crashed, the week before we broke down. So, in a funny way, it's a bit of a relief. It's like, finally we got going good again. Yeah. You never realize that. I didn't realize that was going to be my last win, if that makes sense, because it's like when you win that last race, you kind of think, oh, finally, I'm back. I'm going to be better again. And actually, the last season I ran second 4 times. The last season, we just could do everything but win, if that makes sense. But yes, when you look at the picture now with my mum there and the kids, it was a pretty good deal, yes. But at the time, you just think, oh, I'm going to do my best to try and do this again next week. So you really don't totally take it. In a funny way, you kind of take it for granted, and you don't appreciate it quite as much as what you should.
I agree.
Yeah, and that's something that especially with UK, because I'm around you a lot, during race nights and stuff, that is something that I try to make sure we're in the moment. When you have success, it was great, and I'm glad we were able to document when you won championship night last night too, that we have those memories. Got to celebrate it like it's your last all the time, because you never know when it is your last.
I think Cade was just showing off in front of his wife. That's all he is really trying to do.
Hey, if it works, it works. Keep doing it.
I guess.
Shit.
Yeah, so it's a good option, Cade. Okay, what angle you want to take? Show off in front of Maggie. It'll work out okay.
You're a very humble guy, Skip, so I kind of probably already know what your answer is going to be here, but you were inducted into the Knoxville Raceway Hall of Fame in 2012. What did that accomplishment mean to you, and what did it feel like when, after all the success that you've had in Australia, the success you've had over here, what was that moment like when you found out about that?
I remember coming here in '88 and they had I seen a Knoxville Hall of Fame underneath the grandstand. I thought, wow, this joint's pretty cool. And they go to a lot of trouble to recognize everybody, that some of the people that I'd never heard of. I'd heard of Mike Brooks, obviously, but Earl Wagner and them guys, I'd never heard of them guys, because they weren't predominantly the World of Outlaw guys that I kind of grew up following. But after being here a while, you recognize the fact that they do appreciate the people that have been here for a long time. It's not necessarily just the drivers, but the car owners and some of the people that have been an integral part of the whole sport. So to be appreciated is quite a compliment. So that's where Knoxville is so much different to any other place in the world. It does care about what has been, what is today, what is going to be tomorrow. So that's where, and the other greatest thing about Knoxville is the people that run it. Like Capitani set a great example of not being he was always kind, and he wasn't a greedy person at all. He wasn't selfish or self-centered. And John McCoy has taken that exact same pedestal of being kind, generous, and definitely not greedy or self-centered, trying to do what's best for the sport, and look at not just as a race car driver, you are completely 100% self-centered, and that's not just me. That's all the drivers. When you want to win, you will do whatever it takes to win, and you are so narrow-minded and so gun-barrel focused that what's going on around you is completely irrelevant. Whereas Capitani and John McCoy, over the years, they have done a great job of not just recognising the fact that each driver is completely single-minded, but they appreciate the fans, the officials, the sponsors, the town, the community, and everything else that is involved in making sure that everything gets reinvested into the whole sport, not just one single facet, which as a race car driver, that's the only part you care about is you. But there is a lot more to the whole situation than just that.
Yeah.
And that's even something I noticed, bringing in Jason Reed into that picture too. I wasn't able to make all of the fundraisers that were going on at the racetrack, but he was not only at yours on Saturday, Kate, he was helping with the event and everything, and I think that's really cool. And that is how it does feel like there's a family around there, and everybody looks out for each other. And
Yes.
not surprised you turned a question about you and praising a whole bunch of other people, Skip. So that's also you're, like I said, you're a very humble guy, and that speaks volumes to you, because you're a big part of that as well, and you still can't get away from that damn place. You are still there every Saturday night.
It's funny because when I did stop racing, I wasn't that I was angry, but so much other stuff happened at the same time that I had to concentrate on something a little bit different. But what I didn't realize is I was also looking at the races from a different perspective, sitting up in the grandstands with the kids. And 9 o'clock, nine o'clock, they think this is great. 9:30, they're starting to get restless. By 10 o'clock, they're ready to go home. And at 10:30, no matter what, you are going home. It doesn't matter what race is on. It doesn't matter if it's Steve Kinzer or Kate Higday. They are going home. And that's something that you got to, as when you're a race car driver, you don't care about that stuff because you're completely focused. But the whole big picture, the people up in the stands, it means a lot. So, but in Australia, we took a lot of things for granted because the races had to be done by 10:30 because of the noise curfew. Whereas a lot of nights here at Knoxville, you used to go up to midnight and nobody cared. Well, then when I was up in the grandstands with the kids at 10:30, when you're walking out the gate and there's still races going on because the kids don't want to be there anymore. You got to kind of changes your perspective a little bit, and you look at a bigger picture than just yourself. So I think Knoxville has tried their best to get the show rolling a little bit better so that the 11 o'clock finishes are now extremely rare.
Yeah.
Last year at Nationals, when it was over by 9:15, that was like best thing ever because the year before they should have been done by 10 or 10:30, but they had a wreck and that kind of slowed everything up. But I think last year, I know it was weather because of the weather, and they were great, and all the decisions they had to make were spur of the moment. Everything went really smooth. But the biggest thing I noticed was by 9:30, there's some people it made everything a lot more fun because nobody was in a huge rush to leave. The ones that wanted to get out of there straight away did, but at the same time, it wasn't urgency like it is in a lot of years when it gets done at 10:30 or 11 o'clock or whatever. So, and the people in Pennsylvania, it was only 10:15 there. And the people in California, they got to watch it. And the people in Australia, they didn't care because they were watching it on a nice Sunday afternoon anyway. So but it made it so that a lot more people could come down after the races and just be around, and having a winner like Ryan Timms that nobody expected, made it even better, I think.
Absolutely.
When I first met you in 2023, I remember asking you, I was like, so what do you do during the nightly basis? And you just said, I'm a helper. Is that still your responsibilities? Would you say you're just a helper at Knoxville, or, what kind of goes into your night?
Basically, John McCoy's the main man, Mike Proffitt's the competition director, and I make sure that I can help them a little bit. And when the cars come through tech, I got my part that I do, and there's several other people like Todd and Rick Rankin that help and profit. He keeps an eye on all of us to make sure that we're all just doing our little bit. So I'm just a part of everything. Wally makes sure everybody's parked in the right place. Jason makes sure that everybody goes out in time trials in the right place. So everybody has their little piece that they do a great job of making sure that everything happens. Lots of little things, all the people up in the screwing box, you take them for granted, but if something gets a little bit screwed up, everybody's yelling and screaming.
Yeah, they are.
and then when they look at it, it's like, oh, every once in a while that might make a little boo-boo, but for the most part, when you explain to people, well, this happens and that happens, that makes more sense now. It's like, so they come down, they're angry, then when you show them everything, it's like, oh, okay, it's right.
How hard is it? Because you're usually the guy that if a guy finishes in the work area and wants to get back out on the racetrack, you're usually the guy that's holding them. How hard is that job to be? Because they work so hard to get back out on the track,
yes.
but there are rules. And to be that guy that's like, no, you cannot go.
You are right, because I know how hard it is, but at the same time, it's very much a bit of a judgment call. Mm-hmm. First of all, if the race is about to go, you can't send somebody out, and so it's a common sense thing that in that side of things, because John's very good at keeping an eye on where the cars are, and he'll do whatever it takes within reason to make two things. He tries to keep the show running smoothly, so there's not too many hiccups, but at the same time, he also appreciates how hard everybody works just to get to the racetrack. So and sometimes if the car's broken, they say, oh, it's okay, I'm just going to go out there and not drive very hard. It's like, dude, your car's broken. And at Knoxville, you go so fast, you just can't afford to have. You crash. I've crashed there with a broken front axle or a broken wheel or whatever, and I didn't even know that was going to happen. But if you can see something's not right, that's not worth it, because the consequences are really, really bad.
And it's helpful, yourself as a former racer, John's a racer. Like, you have a lot of guys that have a lot of experience, either working on cars, racing them as well. That's invaluable too, because you can see something like that if somebody has done a lot of studying, but you might be able to pick something out and be like, yeah, we can't do that. You're staying in here.
Yeah, some you don't pick up everything because it's very much in the heat of the moment. Sometimes it's dark, and sometimes you do miss things, but for the most part, you can see things. That's not going to work, mate. Or when a car comes in, we'll get it. I say, no, you won't.
I always love it. I always love it because whenever you're in the work area, you're a totally different person than you normally are. You're like, no, that's not happening. Any other time you have to tell somebody something they don't want to hear, you just kind of have like this real quiet mannerism about you. But in the work area, you're barking orders. No, you are not doing that. I love it.
Well, sometimes they don't hear you very well.
Fair. Or they don't want to hear you very well, Kate. I don't think you've ever done anything like that.
I'm guilty.
Yeah. So, Skip, as we kind of start rounding things out here, where would you like to see sprint car racing in, say, 10, 15 years? You've this is not an age thing, but you have seen a lot of sprint car racing in your times. We have high limit racing. We have the World of Outlaws now. Where would you like to see it here in 10, 15 years with the state of the sport?
That's a really, really good question, because first of all, like over the years, like with the Outlaws back in '88 when I first came here, everybody was mad at Ted, so the USA started up, and with Steve and Sammy. So they had some big names that went with the USA, but the Outlaws still were able to survive. So come 1990, everything was back to normal again. Then I think it was like 2006 when once again everybody is mad at the Outlaws, so they started their own deal. And that might have had traction, but unfortunately Fred Brownfield passed away, so that was the end of that one. Whereas this one here, it seems like it's gained quite a bit of traction with Kyle and Brad. And it's one of the biggest things I can see from a distance is the Water of Outlaws started because of USAC. USAC was basically, you can't do this, you can't do that, turned into a complete rule set. You got to have your hair cut, you got to have the right color hair, you got to be parted the right way. You got numbers on the race car, got to be this big. You got to be doing this, and you can't race anywhere else because it's not a USAC race. And the Water of Outlaws back in the day was Water of Outlaws, run what you run. Whereas they kind of turned into the Water of Rules, and all of a sudden somebody got mad at that, and they've got to be a little bit careful. And probably the biggest thing in a lot is you just got to make sure you're kind. And that's why Knoxville has survived and kept on doing bigger and better. And every week, does every decision go your way? Absolutely not. But they, as a whole, they try to make it kind to the races, and they're trying to do their best. Some races, like you look up in the grandstands in May when it's cold, and there's not very many people up there. But they also recognise that in August, when they get a big crowd, that covers May. So they work back and forth with the good nights versus their bad nights to make sure that everybody gets looked after, and they reinvest in the facilities and the races to make sure that everything keeps going as best it can. And the weekly races at Knoxville set a great standard, and they've got to make this, what the weekly racing deal is going to make it so that the national teams are still going to be strong. The World of Outlaws and High Limits at the moment, they both seem very strong, but without the weekly people, it's not going to stay strong for very long. So the weekly deal has got to keep being strong so that the big national deal can be strong. And I kind of looked at when I was coming up, I never made it that far because I always thought that you had to be really good with what you're at a local deal before you could even think about going to. Whereas some of these guys now that are going to a national tour that hardly won a race or hardly done very many races. So I think they're kind of jumping, they're trying to run before they can really walk, if that makes sense. But some guys like the Logan Schuhart and Jacob Allen, they survived there for a long time. They got pretty dang good.
Yeah.
But they also had a wise old man guiding along the way, which makes a big difference. But I think the weekly programs, and it's very, very important to make sure that the national programs can be sustained for a long time. And the TV deal with Dirt Vision and Flow, that's good because it gives each other competition. But at the same time, they've got to make sure they give back to the little people, not just the big people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we've been talking about this a few weeks in a row, specifically on the weekly shows. Does that worry you at all? Kind of the trajectory that things are on in certain parts of the country?
Yes, absolutely, because where there used to be lots of races that you could do around here, you can't do them anymore because they're just not there. There used to be sprint car races in Missouri and Tulsa and place in Texas. Now there's not so much. And that is a little bit concerning. Even across in Illinois, there's not as much as what there used to be. Or even up in Wisconsin or Minnesota, there's virtually nothing in Minnesota anymore. Yep. So yes, that is. But South Dakota North Dakota, that's still really strong. California's still quite strong. Pennsylvania's quite strong. Ohio's probably not as strong as what it used to be, but Attica's doing a good job. And maybe with the All-Stars now, things can get a little bit better. So I just hope that things can so the national tours are still going to be strong, but also the weekly tours are still going to be strong. And Dirt Vision and Flow, that has made it easier for people to watch it on TV as opposed to coming to the racetrack. So maybe them guys are going to reinvest some back into the weekly races as well, if that makes sense, because they're definitely taking from the grandstands.
Just finding a good balance.
Yes. Yeah, times are different, and you got to adapt a little bit. And Flow and Dirt Vision, I'm sure they're doing okay. So hopefully they can keep making obviously the outlaws and the high limits, that's still the prime deal. But at the same time, they've got to make sure that the little people are going to be okay, to make sure that the big people have got something to race against.
Yeah. That's cool.
Because like in the other night down in Talladega, there's 25 cars. So it's kind of borderline-ish, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I guess one last question for you. Are you ready for the season? We all set? We're about just over a month away. Are you all set for another
It's
year?
funny because I'm not as ready as what I was, say, in 94 or 95 or 96 or something like that. Definitely. When I was racing and being a participant, no, because I used to live it, breathe it, eat it. And to be honest with you, I'd race 6 months here in America. Then the minute I got home, I'd jump off the plane, finish building my car, then race at night. And the same thing had happened at the next 6 months. So am I as enthusiastic as what I was back then? Absolutely not. But yes, I am looking forward to it. Yes, I am looking forward to Knoxville opening back up. And yes, I did pay attention to what's going on in Australia and the outlaw race the other night when Donnie won again. So
It's amazing.
I still pay attention to all that stuff. So am I looking forward to Knoxville Cup? Yes, because I enjoy going there. I enjoy seeing my friends, and including you, Little Jack. And I better put the reason I call him Little Jack is because when he first came by, Jack Haraway, his grandpa, was the announcer. And he said, "This is my grandson, Josh." And unfortunately, I couldn't remember his name very good. But I always remembered him as Little Jack. So even though it's Josh, he might be Josh, but to me, you're always Little Jack.
Hey, I'll take it. I did just think of one other thing before we get out of here is we talked to Scott Boguski last year and we talked about the fun story about getting you back in the race car if you had your old suit. Did that get the juices going at all? And were you like, damn, I missed this a little bit, or no?
Yeah, Scott kind of sucking me back in for another go. And at first I thought I better just go there and just make sure it's okay. And he said, "You didn't even gas it." So then I went out and I gassed it for about 4 or 5 laps. And it's like, it's kind of like, this car's faster than what I am. So it's like, I better stop. And it's like, it was good I didn't realize it at the time. But I was like, kind of like just putting an exclamation point on it, because people say, "Do you ever want to do it again?" You know, I know how hard you got to work at it to go good. And I don't want to put that effort in anymore. And whoever wins Knoxville whether it's a 305 or 360 or a 410 race, whoever wins that race, it doesn't matter who it is. They've done a great job, because I know firsthand how difficult it is, how much effort each person puts in. It's whether you win or lose, everybody puts in a big effort. And the guy that wins, it doesn't matter. So congratulations, because you deserve it. Because to win a race, it's hard. And there's one guy that does, and there's 24 other guys that wishes they were that guy. So,
Well, Skip, we appreciate your time here this evening. A lot of people are going to enjoy this. They know where to find you over the summer here while you're at Knoxville. We appreciate you for hanging out with us. For those that are watching online, for next week's Knoxville Nights episode, still TBD what we're going to have on store. Make sure to tune in to Sprint Car Nights here this week. Chase Rodman's going to join us. We're going to talk Donnie Schatz's win. A lot of that drops tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe and watch on YouTube and create a Dirt Vision account. Check us out on Dirt Vision. Listen to Apple's podcast, Spotify, and all our other platforms. Follow at Team Netcode and all of our social medias. Josh, Cade, and I have our social media. Skip doesn't even know how to turn the iPad on, so I don't think social media is going to be for him in the next couple of years, or at least in his lifetime. So,
you can find him at Knoxville Raceway. That's his social media right there.
You want to see what Skip's thoughts are on everything, you meet him at Knoxville Raceway.
That's right.
Skip, we appreciate your time, man, and we can't wait to see you here in a couple of weeks.
yeah, it's always good to see you guys. And Cade, you keep showing up in front of Maggie, and I'll probably see you a couple of times at the end of the night at Tech. So that's always good. And it's always
Hopefully
good to see
so.
you, Little Jack, and to you too, Blake.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Skip.
Yeah,
It was a lot
thank
of
you.
fun.
No worries. Good seeing you guys.